All right. I want to give my review so far, my series review of Malazan, Book of the Fallen, having only read now the first 4 books of the series. I haven't read anything else. I've read just the epilogue, or not the epilogue, the prologue of Midnight Tide. So I'm going to be going into the 5th book, and I'll give another kind of reaction then. But this is a non-spoiler look at these first 4 books for people who maybe are either looking to get into the series, or if they are struggling maybe with the first book or the second book. Just kind of the things that you might get into. Now, some of the things that I love about this series didn't really blossom, I guess you could say, until a little bit later, maybe closer towards the end of the second book, and really starting to get ramped up by the 3rd and the 4th book. But in retrospect, I can go back and see that some of those seeds were being planted early on in the series. Like one of the things I think is the very strongest about this series, and that I am totally hooked with. If you haven't been able to tell, if you're new to this, spoiler alert, I really have loved this series. This is on track of definitely being potentially my favorite series of all time, fantasy series. I've really, really loved it. If you are new here, though, or what did I just say? Yeah, if you know who I am, if you've been to this channel, it's probably because of this recent Malazan read-through that I've been doing, and you can find that on my channel. And I just wanted to ask if you have decided to either read the series or push through maybe the first couple books because of maybe one of my other videos or something, please let me know. Because I'd like to know if someone maybe pushed through and now are enjoying it. Even if there was one person who, decided to give the series a real shot and now they're enjoying it, that I would love that. I would love that. Okay, so Gardens of the Moon is the first one. And by far out of the first 4, I would call it the weakest one, but I don't think it's a weak book at all. I just think some of the characters in this book I didn't really grow to love until later on. Some of them were just kind of characters on a page. Now, there was a lot happening in this first book. So as I was going through it, I was really just focusing on the plot and the actual characters and a lot of their relationships and things. First of all, the first problem I had, or the first thing I did wrong, is I just went through it a little bit too quickly, just trying to focus on some big picture things. And I think that was actually probably fine because it did get me through the book and relatively quickly. I think in like 5 or 6 days. So I really, really liked it. But I know that if I looked back now, a lot of this would be kind of muddy, especially towards, that middle kind of section. There's a lot that I don't really remember. Dead House Gates. This was the one, I know a lot of people burn out on this. This is the one where I really was kind of getting sold on it, especially towards the end here. But I really loved the starting. It starts with a bang in the prologue. Memories of Ice, I just absolutely adored start to finish. And same thing with House of Chains. I adored it start to finish. But there were maybe in this book, there were a few things where I was like, I don't know if I loved that scene or that scene or that scene. It was Memories of Ice that I thought there wasn't even a scene wasted for me. Now, if you want to know kind of how it splits these first books in a non-spoiler way, we have some different continents in this series. We have the prologue of Malazan, of Gardens of the Moon, that takes place, I believe, on Unta is the name of that the main kind of continent where the capital of the Malazan Empire is. We have some stuff going on there, and we have this coup. We have this coup going on, and I'm not going to kind of explain what's going on in these. I just want to give a detailed, a little bit of a thing for people who are considering the series. A little bit of a coup going on. Old emperor going out, new empress coming in, and then it quickly goes to this other continent where called Genebacus, where this takes place, and we are getting. Imagine the Malazan Empire is kind of spreading out to all these different continents and things to different varying degrees of success, and we get to a city named Pale. And where this book takes place is just kind of the very tail end of the Malazan Empire kind of spreading into this to take over this city. And now they're kind of putting their eyes on other cities, especially this other city named Darujistan. So we kind of see this resistance against the Malazan Empire, but we also see people on the side of the Malazan Empire. And this book, you might go through and be like, I still don't know who I'm really rooting for. And that's fine. If you get to the end of this book and you're like, I don't know who I'm rooting for. Is the Malazan Empire good? Is it bad? Is this empress good? Is she bad? Is this and this and this person good or bad? Or what the heck was this? We all think that by the end of the first book. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, I think there are characters at the very least that you think, I don't know if I like who they're working for, but I like this character because they have done A, B, and C. And I don't like them because they've done X, Y, Z. That's kind of what this first book is. It's a lot, this a lot kind of feels like a big act one. It's like kind of like the first two books feel like a big act one to me, but you do get a beginning, middle, end. It's not just going to end in the middle of nothing happening. Definitely stuff happens. It is explosive. There is a lot of action, but again, I didn't give it really the time it deserves to really find the compassion and the characterizations and things that happen in this series. And I'll just mention that. Another big strength of the series before going to Dead House Gates. Sorry, I just ramble this way a little bit. It is in the characterizations and the relationships between characters. And I don't mean relationships necessarily in like romantic relationships, even though there is some of that. It's quite light though, mostly. But I mean just in general, the conflict between characters or the way people are just kind of thrown together. And it doesn't ever really seem like there's a main character and then just the other ones that are supporting cast. So many times, all of these characters feel like their own real thought out people. And I know we hear that said in a lot of reviews about a lot of books. But in this series, that's where it really feels that is taking place, that there are all these real life kind of main characters all thrown into this one series. And there's so much kind of magic sauce or whatever. So we get Gardens of the Moon on this one continent, and then we get Dead House Gates, which is happening on another continent. But imagine in this case, we have the Malazan Empire. They've already kind of been there for a while. And now we have resistance kind of really, really pushing back. In this book, we have Malazans kind of seeming like they're often getting the upper hand. In this one, it's like, they're pushing back. And that doesn't give away anything in the series. There's tons that happens. But that's kind of the general overall vibe. And I think if you liked Gardens of the Moon, try Dead House Gates. And if you get to the end and love it, or even think, wow, that's cool, but I still don't understand it, keep going. Keep going, because I think right away in Memories of Ice, you will know if this series is for you. I've said it before, Memories of Ice is the one where I finally thought, okay, this is the series that I thought I was getting. And now that I've read it and House of Chains, I bet I could go back and see kind of those seeds being planted a little bit more, because I finished these first two books and was like, I have so many questions. I have so many questions about what's going on. But I still thought it was cool. I still thought it was cool. All right, so Gardens of the Moon and Memories of Ice are very related. We have a lot of these characters kind of meshed together, and then we have a lot of the characters in Dead House Gates and House of Chains kind of meshed together. That's kind of how they're split. And I'll leave off where Midnight Ties splits, because I just found that out yesterday and I don't want to give that away. But that's kind of the basic sort of overview of that. Now, another thing that I think is totally amazing about this series, totally blows my mind, other than I think the strongest points are compassion, talking about vengeance, talking about mercy. It's incredibly deep in that regard, as it kind of has to do with these relationships between characters and cultures and things. Now, there's a deep history in this series. Deep history, and we've seen that in a million books. But unlike a lot of things that really take influence from Tolkien, this is completely unique. Completely unique. It's not just split apart with dwarves, elves, orcs, humans. This is totally unique. We have people from all these different cultures that some of them live for a long time. We've seen that with elves, obviously. But I don't even want to really get into all the different things, because they will just surprise you. There are all these different races that when you go into them, often in series, there's different races that are just kind of defined by their magical power and their stature or how long they live. But in this, but they all kind of feel like they're the same race, sort of. They kind of often have sort of the same values. But in this, you can see an extreme separation of values at times. And I think it's interesting because if you tie that with the compassion thing, when you read them, sometimes you will read a character you'll read of a character, or you'll read of like a culture that has been doing these awful things, which we would read as terribly awful things. And sometimes they've been doing these for generations and generations, perhaps centuries or thousands of years. And it's interesting in this series how Steven Erikson will strip away at how people kind of got to that moment, either that individual character or that culture. And it's not in a way that's trying to kind of rationalize why it's okay, because, it's not okay. It's not okay. A lot of these things that are happening. But you start to understand how people have been sometimes born into a crappy situation, born into a culture that's just kept doing things one way over and over. Or at times you can see how it has been their crappy decisions that have led them down that way, but sometimes just by increments, almost like that frog in the boiling pot analogy, just slowly, incrementally going down this road to making some terrible decisions. But again, sometimes it's not even their fault necessarily, especially when you start to see like the grandparents of some of these people. But that's where we kind of see exploration of these different cultures, and that's where we can see compassion and mercy again. And one of the things that I love is we can see this theme of breaking off, kind of stripping away the bad from perhaps our old self, or perhaps our some of the bad things that our old culture has been doing, our society that we have been a part of, and maybe making better choices, or choosing new people to kind of influence us, having our own expectations kind of challenged. That is something that I love from this series. I love it. I love it. I love it. There are so many groups of people that are bundled together, and you think, okay, how are these two people going to jive together, and what kind of explosive kind of dynamics are they going to have, and where is there some possible resolution? I really love it. Now, there's also humor in this series, and I found it definitely in all of them, but especially in these last two books that I've read. This series, if you don't know, kind of came about from a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that they had going on for however long. I actually don't know. But you can see some of the humor from that. I can just imagine what it would be like being at the table of these Dungeons and Dragons kinds of this campaign that they had at some of these moments, because they're just so wild. There's this thing in Dungeons and Dragons. I've only played it one time, but a natural 20 roll. You have this dice with the 20, and then when you roll the 20, it's like this ultra awesome thing. And the person who's kind of doing I can't remember if they're called the GM or the DM. They are the one that they have to kind of say what is the result of this amazing roll that a person did, and everyone just kind of gets excited. And it's like if you were just trying to throw a fireball at someone, and then you rolled, and if it was like a 14 and up, it would succeed. If you get a 20, it's like the fireball went into the guy's eye, and then did this and this and this, and broke down his house, and then this. It just is a way over the top thing that happens. And on the same time, if it seems like something so easy and you have to get a 5, and a person is just trying to like jump over a little creek and he rolls a 1, you might never see that character again. They might just kill off your character. And you can see these just explosive things that happen in this series, where you often see, okay, preparation, payoff at the end. But sometimes it's like preparation. Holy crap, what the heck happened? Who rolled a 1 in this campaign? Or who suddenly rolled a 20? Because sometimes there is just explosive, off-the-wall stuff that happens. And it's hilarious sometimes. Sometimes it's brutally violent. But it's really actually quite amazing. Quite amazing. And you can see kind of how it doesn't just throw everything, and it's not just random chaos, even though there is a lot of that, and it's in the theme as well. But that is something that I think you will like. It's really like you are in the game with them. You have to go into this series not looking to the end. You have to go into it expecting to enjoy the journey. If you're not able to just slow down, if you're one of the people who are trying to like read 10 books this month, I don't know if this series is the one you are going to be wanting to look for, because you are probably going to want to slow down. And I think this book, like many books, deserves that. Now, maybe the last thing that is so amazing about this series is the mystery. The mystery. It's just, there's so much that you have to wonder about. I've mentioned before, but when I went through Lost with everyone else from the second season on. So whenever the seasons were going on, in between, everyone I worked with was watching, and people in my family were watching, and you just wonder, what the heck does this mean? What are these others? What is this black smoke? What is this? What are we doing on this island? And you get a lot of that here, and the author will bring you along. So if you wonder, and I've mentioned before, if you wonder if you're still in the dark by the second book, If you wonder if you should be more ahead than you are, uh, I would say that you just trust Steven Erickson that he will bring you along. But at the same time, he will always throw little things in this series that will make you feel like you are in the dark, especially in the conclusions. There have been times in each of these conclusions where I've thought, what the heck is this? What the heck is this new thing that you have introduced? And you have to be ready for some of that. But all in all, I am just blown away by this series. I have been doing this series kind of overview, like I mentioned, of kind of when things happen, big things happen. I've sometimes been going chapter by chapter. But the thing that, again, that I love the most from this series is the themes. I think if you are someone looking for some meaning in fantasy, sometimes fantasy is just excitement and action, and there definitely is that. But if you are looking for something that makes you think, that you are willing to stop and contemplate, I think this is the series. Now, I don't know if I did that a whole bunch in the first book again. But you certainly will be starting to do that by the second book if you start to kind of pay attention. And I really love it. And I can't wait to keep going. And subscribe and like if you want some more of this Malazan content. I know this one was kind of rambly, but that's just the way I talk. So hope that's all right. And I'll see you on the next one.